Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Consciousness. Today, I would like to explore together with you the practices of the gradual path and the sudden awakening path. In Tibetan Buddhism, at least, the teachings seem to be divided in these two categories of relative and ultimate. The relative teachings are all the teachings that refer to working with the content of your experience, trying to change them and transform them into healthy aspects, while the ultimate teachings point to the recognition of the context, or rather the space in which the content comes and goes. So usually in these two schools, they both say that you shouldn't mix the teachings together. And the reason they say that is that so you don't get confused as to how you should practice. So in the gradual approach, they say that Buddha nature or awareness or consciousness, whatever word we use to call it, is like a seed. So it's inside of you, you have it, but you need to work and train, and gradually that seed begins to bloom into a tree. And when it's fully awakened in you, then you're a Buddha. Then you are a awake, self-realized being that knows their true nature and can rest as such. But the ultimate teachings, or the sudden awakening teachings, as they are also called, they say that no, that's not right, because Buddha nature, awareness or consciousness, is already perfect and complete in all of us. So it's not a matter of working hard or training or practicing to develop it. It's rather recognizing it in your own experience in the present moment. And by recognizing it and resting as it, slowly, the mind begins to develop the qualities of meditation spontaneously, naturally, without any effort. And the contractions, the confusion, the grasping and the aversion and all these attachments, they begin to dissolve by themselves. They self-liberate. So these two views are very different from each other. And I would like to explore with you now how we can actually practice them simultaneously in our meditation, in our everyday life, and how they can actually help us by complementing each other. So let's start that exploration with the relative practice of focusing on the breath. So if you want, you can close your eyes, maybe adjust your posture a bit. And then notice the breath. Notice how it goes in and out of your nostrils, into your lungs, down into the belly. And the sensation of breathing out. Releasing the breath. Can you notice a shift in your experience when you decide to focus on the breath? And now you can use the breath as a support to go deeply inside the body. So notice how your body feels right now. Where are you experiencing pain or discomfort? Where are you experiencing lightness or pleasure? Let's see what happens if you breathe into those spots. Almost like giving yourself a massage. Taking care of the energies in your body. So, and while we're doing that, maybe we can experiment and see, is it possible to bring in the sudden awakening method of recognizing awareness while we're focusing on the breathing and the sensations in the body? So noticing the breath and feeling into the body. Also notice that which is aware of this practice. To see if it's possible for you as you are breathing into your body to also notice awareness, which is aware of the breathing and the sensations in the body. So, how did that feel? Combining these two practices with each other. I would also like to invite you to move with your awareness down into your body, into the trunk, down into the cushion you're sitting upon or the surface you're laying upon. So moving from the sense of being in the head, and see if you can slowly descend down. So you really feel like you're resting on the surface. And just relax. And so as you keep your attention on the lower part of your body, feeling stable and rooted to the ground, see if you can also notice the space which is aware of you doing that. So what happens when you rest grounded in the present moment inside your body? And then while keeping that in your attention, you also pay attention to awareness. The conscious presence which knows this experience right now. So what happens to the experience? So in this way of meditating, we're actually mixing the two approaches together. So we're starting with the relative practices of breathing and paying attention to the sensations in the body. And that actually can create more space for you to recognize the nature of your mind. So if we would practice this in the opposite direction, and I would tell you to, without relaxing first, to just pay attention to the awareness which knows your experience right now. To shine the light of awareness back into its source. Not finding anything, no object. Only the radiant presence of consciousness. And just resting as it. Nothing else to do. What happens when you do that? Can you notice how your breathing changes, balances itself out? Maybe deepens somewhat and comes to the foreground. So by resting as awareness, you open all your senses. And that can make it so much easier to recognize the energies inside the body. You can go deeper inside and really touch the energetic contractions. They become much more clear in your experience. So this was my example of how the relative and ultimate practices can actually aid each other. Example from everyday life, which I would like to give you now, is if you are familiar with these non-dual teachings of recognizing the nature of your mind and resting and doing nothing else, and trying to keep that recognition in everyday life can be difficult, especially if you get hooked in an intense moment. Perhaps something happens, you become angry at somebody, maybe it's your partner, your parents, or your friends. And even if you then would try to say, okay, I am aware of the energy of anger arising within my body. I can feel it flowing from my belly and solar plexus, rising up as a warm energy. I feel I'm starting to become warm on my cheeks and ears. And the storyline is starting to blame, and self-righteous thoughts are appearing. I am wrong, that I am right, that person is wrong. So you recognize all the symptoms of anger, and then you say, okay, but so what is aware of that? What is aware of this? So what knows this energy arising and falling, flowing through me? So you try to pay attention to that. But this can be difficult because the other person is yelling at you and saying hurtful things. And so we lose that recognition and get sucked back into the energy of anger because we're so used to it. It's our habit to be hooked by intense energies, and we have a tendency to believe the stories accompanying the energies of the emotions. So we believe the thoughts in our head of I am right and that person is wrong. So it can be very difficult to maintain that awareness in intense moments. You can, it's possible, you can have glimpses, but because of habit and because of the power of the emotions itself, and because we're not so familiar yet with this practice of recognizing awareness, we get sucked back into the story. So what do we do? If we try to go back into awareness and no, then we're struggling and we're not getting anywhere, and it will only end up as a form of repression of the energy, and then we try to hold it in, not showing the other person that we're in affect. And then when we can't hold it anymore, then it comes out as blah, saying something hurtful to the other person, which something which we later regret, or screaming, yelling, or some other kind of confused behavior. So in these situations, then it would be best to drop trying to maintain recognition of awareness and just accept, okay, right now, this is difficult. What I'm going through right now is difficult for me. I'm hooked. I feel this pain inside of me and it's difficult to bear. So we try a relative practice instead of breathing into the energy, the emotion, giving ourselves some care and compassion. Yes, this is how I feel and it's okay. Oh, no, relax. Yes, this is difficult. So making a sound, a mantra, like asking for help. So, oh, Buddhas, please help me. Right now I'm caught. I'm feeling so angry at the moment. Please help me. So there are thousands of practices we could do. And then we would notice it would be so much easier for us to relax, and it would be quicker because we have these practices to turn to that help us relax the contractions, to diminish the intensity of the energy. And then when it's not so intense, it is so much easier to shift back into just relaxing into the knowing space of our being with nothing to do, just being. So I hope these examples make it somewhat clear for you how they can be complementary to each other. Another example, if you're sitting in meditation and you have a formal daily practice where you do a specific sort of meditation, or you have a sadhana or a routine in your meditation, and you're doing the practices, you're saying the mantras, you're doing the visualizations, or whatever it is, And then you just suddenly and spontaneously have a glimpse, a recognition, and you rest, then just rest. There's no reason to continue doing the practice, because the purpose of the practice or the goal of the practice has been achieved. So the purpose then becomes to rest and to familiarize your mind and your nervous system with that insight. So then the practice needs to be dropped. Okay. So in a sense, one could say the relative and ultimate practices, or the gradual way and the sudden approach, they go hand in hand, just like the two truths in Buddhism, the relative truth and the ultimate truth. So if I will try to explain these two truths in a very quick and short way, it would be: the relative truth is that you exist, you're sitting here listening to me talk, you have a past, you have thoughts, you have emotions, you have feelings, sensations, perceptions. So all of these things are true, relatively. So ultimately, when we look into the nature of our minds and we can't find anything, we can't find anyone, a separate solid self who's experiencing all phenomena, so ultimately we don't exist, at least not in the way we appear to exist, as separate selves with different personalities and histories. So these are the two truths. So it's almost like we have two beings, but that's not true. But we have an appearance of being somebody, and then we have our true nature, which is beyond self, beyond the personal. It's empty of that. It has no object because it's empty, transparent, yet it is present. It is the knowing quality of all phenomena. So that's the relative and ultimate truth. So we could understand these two practices of the relative and ultimate in that way, that they refer to these two different aspects of our reality. And just focusing on one and denying the other would mean that we turn a blind eye to one aspect of our reality. Could also mean that we become fundamentalist and say, like, no, only this path is correct and all other paths are false. So that's what many gradual Buddhists say, like, oh, you can't just jump straight into the teachings on Buddha nature. You have to do it step by step. You have to first train your mind so it's stable and can maintain attention for a long time without being disturbed. You have to practice understanding emptiness first conceptually, then in your direct experience. You need to purify your mind. You need to accumulate a lot of merit before, and you need to have full renunciation. Renunciation meaning that you have decided to dedicate your whole life to spiritual awakening, and you recognize that nothing in the world can satisfy this deep longing inside of you. So no pleasure and no fame, no wealth, no relationship can satisfy and that inside of you. So the only thing that can help you is to awaken to your true self and to your true potential, and whatever that means in whatever tradition or how we communicate that. So, and then the people who practice the sudden awakening teachings in whatever tradition they are in, they say, no, the relative practices are like a preliminary practice for those who still haven't gotten it yet, for the people who still haven't realized the nature of their mind. So it's like a kindergarten practice first, that you play around and try different tools, and when they don't work out, when they don't bring you to that realization that you're longing for, that awakening, and then you drop it after you've done the whole step-by-step approach, and then you will realize it. But they say like, no, that can't be right, because what you're looking for is already present in your experience. It's perfectly there. All you need to do is to pay attention to it, to familiarize your mind with it, and then you don't need to do any other practice. It's the perfect, complete practice already. No need to train in compassion, no need to train in anything. But is that really true? Sure, that can be the experience we're having while we're practicing, but if we're not yogis or yoginis living in a cave, but we're living a modern Western life where we have jobs, where we have kids, we have responsibilities, where we have a lot of activities, maybe even stress. Of course, stress. Of course, we have stress. We have a lot of stress. And we barely have any time to practice. So then we might not be able to practice in that way. Then we might need the relative practices of mindfulness, of focusing on the breath. And all these step-by-step approaches are actually aids for us to live a more healthy and constructive life. So if we, instead of seeing these two as two opposites to each other, we can see them as two sides of the same coin, and that they complement and help each other, help us to live a healthier life. So should we just abandon all teachings and just practice recognizing and resting in our true nature? No, because all the practices in every tradition, they are beneficial, they're useful, and they can actually help us to stabilize our recognition, to deepen it. It can help us bring that recognition into our everyday life and to our activities. So that's why it's so great to practice stabilizing your attention with an object or the breath, the shamatha practice in Tibetan Buddhism, because it also helps you strengthen your recognition and your absorption in it. So I could go on and talking about every relative practice there is, and then referring to how that can actually help us in resting as awareness itself. But yeah, you get the point. So what more did I want to talk about? Yeah, I would like to read to you a quote from His Holiness Dalai Lama. And this book is referring to the sudden awakening teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, the Dzogchen Mahamudra style. So he writes, practicing the path right now. How can we take innermost awareness into the spiritual path right now? It is through being introduced to and identifying in experience the clear light that pervades all types of consciousness, and one pointedly meditating on this, sustaining attention to it within non-thought, non-conceptualization. Then, as the clear light becomes more and more profound, the types of coarse thoughts diminish more and more. This is why this practice is called the essential path through knowledge of which all states are released. Coming to this single innermost awareness in our own experience, we are liberated from all sorts of tense situations. And then in another chapter, he writes, the danger. In particular, when leaving the session and engaging in other activities, not when reciting prayers and the like, but when meeting people and so forth, meditators are in danger that, due to long acquaintance with powerful afflictive emotions of lust, anger, and obscuration, they will come under the influence of these long established feelings. Hence, it is extremely important to firmly maintain at all times and in all circumstances ascertainment of the experience of having identified innermost awareness, and again taking it to mind without forgetting it, and to act within this ascertainment. And so if we're not able to do that, if we're not able to generate such a strong confidence in the teachings yet, then it's important to use the relative teachings in those intense moments when we're caught. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I would also like to say that the reason the ultimate teachings are regarded as secret by the ones who follow the gradual approach and are usually only presented to people after they've trained for several decades in the step-by-step approach, is not because it is not possible to have a genuine realization without first training your mind. It is because of something called spiritual materialism. So that means if a person is seeking practices only to feel better, only to improve their lives, to become smarter, to become more resilient to stress, to become more successful. So if they're only concerned with worldly activities, and that's the reason they're seeking teachings, then the danger is if you present the non-dual teachings to these people and they don't understand it, they don't have recognition, they don't have a glimpse, nothing happens in them, then they will just discard it as something useless. So it doesn't work for me, now I'll just continue practicing, concentrating on the breath instead. So these teachings are a real treasure, and they are very special and different compared to other teachings. So let us be mindful of that and treasure them. Okay, so I hope that you have a lot of questions for me, which I will try to answer and probably fail in. So thank you for listening to me, and for everyone at home, I wish you a great day. Bye.